Chatham, Kent Leamington.
I'll give two responses. First of all, I'll ask the question, this government has promised payments coming to seniors. When? My constituents haven't seen it. Secondly, seniors and all people on fixed income are experiencing inflation. That is the tax that's eroding what they are already receiving. We need to blunt the force of inflation, the resulting higher interest rates that will help our seniors and all of us in this economy.
Now, we'll have 2 minutes or so of questions and comments when we come back on this. Statements by members. The Honourable Member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Mr. Speaker, 20 years ago, I participated in a conference on integrating Ukraine into Europe's economic and security structures. I was studying overseas in Poland and invited the Ukrainian delegation of young people and professionals to my apartment. We talked about the yearning of Ukrainian people for true independence and building stronger relationships with Europe. A year later, those same young people texted me from the streets of Kiev during the Orange Revolution that reasserted Ukraine's independence. Today, I join the Ukrainian community in Windsor-Tecumseh, anxiously watching the aggressive Russian military buildup on Ukraine's border. As Polish Canadians, we have seen this movie play out many times. A revanchist and imperialistic Russia is a danger not only to Ukraine and bordering countries like Poland and the Baltic states, but it poses a danger to democracy around the world. My message to our Ukrainian friends and to all Canadians is that Canada stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. Slava Kanadi, Slava Ukraini.
Honourable Member for King Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to acknowledge all those celebrating Lunar New Year, wishing them much success, peace and happiness in the Year of the Tiger. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to acknowledge that today is World Cancer Day. I would like to recognize and give thanks to an avid volunteer and constituent of King Vaughan. Mrs. Mina Petosha is a two-time cancer survivor who lives with the positive attitude that a cure can be found. I also want to recognize a dear friend, Mr. Tony Gallo, who is currently undergoing treatments so that he too can count himself a survivor. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family, Donna, Joseph, Mario, and his family and friends. We recognize that every one of us has the ability to make a difference, no matter how little, and by working together, we can make meaningful progress in reducing cancer globally. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge Black History Month. It's an occasion to celebrate, show appreciation, and recognize the accomplishments of Black Canadians throughout our history to building a better Canada. The trailblazers of yesterday, among them boxer, activist, and Nova Scotia Sergeant at Arms Buddy Day, and civil rights pioneer and Nova Scotia businesswoman Viola Desmond, and the change makers of today, including the inspiring woman who joined me at the Minister's Black Women's Roundtable in Halifax in November. I especially want to acknowledge the diverse Black communities in my riding of Halifax West, such as the historic community of Lucasville and the newer generations of Black immigrants qui comptent parmi eux.
They include many Francophones who make significant contributions.
Keep moving forward to support Black Canadians. Joyeux mois de l'histoire.
Wishing you a good Black History Month. Thank you.
For Edmonton Griesbach.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On average, Canada sees a staggering 19 deaths per day due to opioid-related drug poisoning. But the opioid crisis isn't affecting people equally. Youth, racialized folks, and Indigenous people have been hit the hardest, and federal policies that treat addiction with arrests and incarceration are only making things worse. We see the human toll of this failed approach every single day in my riding of Edmonton-Griesbach. Over the past few months, I've met with groups like Mom Stop the Harm and the Bear Clan Patrol that are doing the truly heroic work to save lives and promote healing on our streets and in our neighborhoods. Their message is clear. It's time for the federal government to act by decriminalizing drug use and making sure there's safe supply. It will save lives. That's why I'm calling on members of this House to pass Bill C-216, because harm reduction will save lives. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Orléans.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Visiting the Pharmacie Avalon Compound Pharmacy last October along with my counterpart, MPP Stephen Blais. The owner and pharmacist, Andrew Anna, specialize in bringing customized medication with a doctor's prescription to the liking of its client. It was truly impressive to see the technology on site. Mais aujourd'hui,
But today, I want to thank Mr. Hanna for his involvement and leadership in the community of Orleans.
January 7th, in Orléans, I had the pleasure of attending the first and the largest pharmacy COVID-19 vaccination walk-in clinic in Eastern Ontario. This overnight clinic was held from 8 p.m. and ran until they administered all 1,000 doses they had to give out. It was truly a team effort, and thanks to the initiative like this one, more individuals in my community were able to be vaccinated. Et pour ceux qui s'en rappellent,
And for those who remember it, January 7th was one of the coldest nights. It was a pleasure to offer coffee to those who were patiently waiting outside.
to everyone that participated to help to fight COVID-19.
The honourable member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, I'm proud to represent the riding of Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, and I want to share my appreciation for the good deeds being done across our communities. Thank you to the public libraries for organizing winter clothes drives. Thank you to the many churches, large and small, for the hard work you do preparing meals and sharing food. Thank you to the volunteers at our local shelters and food banks. Thank you to the individuals who do random acts of kindness without expecting to receive any praise. While the winter continues, we see families struggling, and I'm proud of all of you for stepping up and supporting our communities and to take care of your neighbors. On February 26th, the coldest night of the year walk for the homeless will be happening throughout Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, and Canada. And I encourage all who can to come out and continue to show that community spirit. Create a team and walk to raise money for organizations that support people who are homeless and hungry. Together, we can continue to make a difference for those in need, and I hope to see you there.
Excellent.
The honourable member for St. John's East.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The 2022 Olympic Games are here, and we are looking forward to cheering for the 125 athletes representing Team Canada. Sport brings communities together, and I'll be joining Canadians across the country to watch our very best compete as they inspire people of all ages. So, from this house to theirs, a special best wishes to the Newfoundland and Labrador's own curlers, Brett Gallant, Brad Gurju, and Mark Nichols, and all of our amazing athletes. Go, Canada, go. Merci.
The honourable member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise in this House today to speak about what has been going on in my community of Ottawa Centre. Les manifestations qui se poursuivent depuis 7 jours en terre.
The protests that have occurred for 7 days, have been difficult.
Symbols, and the incessant honking is unbearable. Parking lots are being used as urinals. Fireworks are being hurled down the streets in night, and the air is thick with diesel fuel. Residents are not sleeping. Businesses are shuttered. Parliament Hill is regularly used for peaceful protest, as they are a hallmark of every democracy. Ce n'est pas une manifestation pacifique.
This is not a peaceful protest. This is oppressive.
Is enough. This needs to end now. Let our community live in peace again. Thank you.
The honourable member for Bruce Grey, Owen Sound.
Mr. Speaker, I struggled in deciding what to focus my statement on today. I could easily spend a minute talking about the loss of my Uncle Morley Kaufman, the loss of Colonel retired John Fife, a great friend, mentor, and leader from Oromocto, New Brunswick, or the loss of World War II veteran Charles Fisher from Owen Sound, amongst many others that we've lost over the last couple of months. I could do a full statement in recognition of Dr. Kelly Barrett, a local veterinarian who was the first woman bovine practitioner of the year as awarded by the American Association of Bovine Practitioners this past October, and only one of 3 Canadians to win this award this century. I could do a full statement on thanking the member of Durham for his service, leadership, and dedication as the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. However, in the end, Mr. Speaker, I'll end my statement by simply asking all members of this House and all Canadians watching to please respect each other. The pandemic's been hard on everyone. We should treat each other as we want to be treated ourselves. Oh yeah, Mr. Speaker, Wired and Willie predicts it's going to be an early spring.
The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister and the Manitoba Caucus and I met with some teachers virtually yesterday, and I wanted to be able to highlight that discussion. They included teachers from Children of the Earth, Garden Grove, Meadows West, and Sisler High, and other areas of the city of Winnipeg. Teachers are mentors to our students. They are coaches and advocates. Their wisdom and guidance bring out the best in students and inspire them to aim high and persevere. Every day, teachers play an important role in our communities and society. But since the pandemic started almost 2 years ago, teachers have had to drastically adjust to many challenges. They had to adapt to increased workloads, pressures, and virtual classes. The love and care for our young people shown every day by teachers is inspiring, Mr. Speaker. Our teachers have risen to the challenge and have gone above and beyond in engaging every student. On behalf of the Prime Minister and the caucus, we want to thank and applaud the efforts of all teachers across Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill.
COVID has painfully proven that Canada's healthcare system is not capable of handling a high volume of emergent patients, particularly over a sustained period of time. Today, in year 3 of COVID, provincial governments are still closing businesses and imposing restrictions because of this. And even with these restrictions, doctors and nurses will tell you that this approach does not reduce their burden. Business closures and restrictions on gathering and movement will not fix our healthcare system. And as of today, there is still no coordinated, funded plan to do so. On behalf of my constituents and healthcare workers, I call on the federal government to immediately act as a convener and establish a framework on how it can support provinces and ensure that this problem is permanently rectified. Because shutting down our way of life to reduce the burden on hospitals without a plan to fix the problem that have been persistent for decades must end.
The honourable member for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Miles Lynch, a vibrant young man from St. Andrews West who used his lived experience to advocate for organ donation. Miles battled cystic fibrosis and made history when he became the first Canadian to receive 3 double lung transplants in his lifetime. But I'm sad to say that Miles passed away at the young age of 24 on December 31st. Miles is what I would define as a happy warrior, positive, passionate, even humorous, as seen in his documentary, 8,000 Miles. I had the pleasure of chatting with Miles several times about ways more organ donors could save lives for generations to come. In 2019, 260 Canadians died while waiting for an organ donation. We need to change that. So I ask Canadians to think of Miles Lynch today and his family and friends, and take a moment to sign up and be an organ donor in this great Canadian's memory. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Laval-les-Îles.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to mark Sri Lanka's 74th Independence Day, a day filled with enormous pain and anguish for the Tamil people on the island. Over the course of its history, the Tamil people hailing from the north and east of the island have lived as second-class citizens. They have been denied education, employment, even freedom to practice faith. Le Sri Lanka passe actuellement par une crise économique.
Sri Lanka is experiencing an economic crisis and is about to go bankrupt. In spite of this, Sri Lanka continues to fund its military, which represents up to 15% of annual government expenditures.
I want to express my solidarity to the Tamil constituents in Laval and around the world, and with them to get justice and to enjoy permanent peace on the island. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to speak once again to the very serious situation facing wild salmon and steelhead on British Columbia's north and central coasts. A recent study shows Alaska's fisheries are catching hundreds of thousands of fish bound for our rivers. Alaskans have become the biggest harvesters of many BC wild salmon populations, even while we see our stocks decline. Last year, BC's commercial fleet was tied up at the dock. Sport fisheries were closed, and many First Nations couldn't catch their food fish. That same year, Southeast Alaska caught 650,000 Canadian sockeye salmon. 470,000 of those were headed for the Skeena River alone. And that's just sockeye, Mr. Speaker. The same story holds true for chum, pink, coho, chinook, and steelhead. The Pacific Salmon Treaty was negotiated during times of relative abundance, but now it's failing to deliver on its key mandate of equity and conservation, and it isn't up for renewal until 2028. We need the fisheries minister to act now. We must use mechanisms to open the treaty and begin emergency negotiations with the Americans. Mr. Speaker, our wild salmon can't wait until 2028.
L'honorable député de Abitibi-Témiscamingue.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This morning we saw the opening of the 24th Olympic Winter Games in Beijing. It is our duty to remember that these games should never have been held in China, a state that is guilty of genocide against its own Uyghur people. However, we also have a duty to remember that it is not the choice or the fault of our athletes. The courage of Quebec's athletes is as great as the Canadian government's cowardice in the face of China. We are talking about local people who devoted their entire lives to their sport and now have the opportunity to shine before the world. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I'd like to wish the best of luck to all of Quebec's athletes from each one of our regions. I wish them results that will live up to their greatest hopes, to their greatest efforts, to their great Olympic dreams. Dear Olympians, the whole of Quebec is behind you.
The honourable member for Regina Louvain.
Mr. Speaker, and I'll take a quick second to say hi to Nixon, Claire, Jameson, and my wife Larissa in the galleries today. This past week, Regina lost one of its most well-known and respected community leaders. John Hawkins, CEO of the Regina Chamber of Commerce, passed away on Wednesday after a courageous battle with cancer. John was a staple in the Regina business and political community, lending his organizing skills to many Regina initiatives over the 21 years that he was the CEO. I will particularly miss John's judgment and thoughtful advice about Saskatchewan political discourse. We enjoyed many coffees and lunches together, and his opinions were always respected, and his kindness and generosity made him a joy to chat with whenever you'd run into him at local events. When John was diagnosed with cancer in 2018, he took the challenge head on, continuing to be visible in the community, taking advantage of each day to educate others about his illness and to raise money with his garage band buddies. John's passion for Regina's business community was infectious, and he undoubtedly left Regina better than when he was CEO in 2001. I ask the House to join me in honoring John Hopkins for his years of service to Regina and to send condolences to his family, friends, and colleagues at the Regina Chamber of Commerce for their significant loss.
The honourable member for Newmarket Aurora.
Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, February the 6th, Canada celebrates the Platinum Jubilee, marking the 70th year reign of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. There's no doubt that she has seen many heartbreaking moments and heartfelt joys during her reign as our sovereign. And throughout all these years, she has been the hallmark of prudence, stability, and insightful leadership, articulating values that we have seen stand the test of time. The majority of events for the Jubilee will actually take place in June. On June the 2nd, Coronation Day, there will be the lighting of a giant beacon in Ottawa, one of 1,500 beacons being lit around the Commonwealth and the United Kingdom. And in honor of Her Majesty's steadfast service to Canada, our government is funding community-based projects to pay tribute to Canada's long-standing relationship with the Crown. I encourage all Canadians to plant a commemorative tree or plant a cultural event to celebrate 70 years of leadership from Her Majesty the Queen.
Oral questions. Question orale. L'honorable député de Mégantic.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, After a week, it's time to end the protests in front of Parliament Hill in Ottawa. And it's also time to end the restrictions that are at the basis of this protest. The signs of hate and disrespect that we have seen are unacceptable. We are seeing a real lack of leadership. The Mayor of Ottawa, the police force, they are all asking for something to be done. But instead, the Prime Minister has been pouring oil on the fire and has maintained the restrictions instead of listening to the protesters. We need a leader. Today, my question, what will the Prime Minister do to end this situation peacefully? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Last night, I had a good discussion with the Mayor of Ottawa, Mr. Watson. Subsequently, I ensured that the RCMP has confirmed that they will be adding resources on the ground. We need to recognize the destruction caused by the convoy. We need to support residents. The RCMP will be there to support Ottawa Police. The Ottawa Police is the police force that has jurisdiction. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, 2 years after the beginning of the pandemic, 34,000 Canadians have died. The pandemic has placed great strain on a healthcare system that was already fragile. The healthcare system is suffering, and it is not just the COVID pandemic that is responsible. We are doing badly among peer countries when it comes to hospital beds per capita. Will the Prime Minister commit today to starting discussions on healthcare transfers with the provinces? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank my colleague for his question. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to bring to light many challenges in the healthcare system. For example, when it comes to prevention control, we have been there to support the provinces and territories from the beginning of the pandemic. And we will continue to work with provinces and territories in order to fight COVID-19. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, I would like to share some numbers with my colleague. When it comes to the number of doctors, Canada is 32nd among OECD countries. It's not surprising that people are having trouble finding family doctors. The Conservatives have promised to increase healthcare transfers by at least 0.6 a year and to start discussions with the premiers within their first 100 days. The Council of the Federation will be held today. Will the Prime Minister agree to unconditionally increase healthcare transfers? Yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. And I'd like to thank my colleague for the chance to practice my French today. However, in this case, I will answer in English.
My numbers, because the question was about numbers, and indeed we've provided $63.7 billion in support for Canada's health response, including $14 billion for vaccines, including $5.3 billion for PPE, and last year alone we provided almost $42 billion in cash support to provinces and territories. I wish to work together with my colleague on the Committee for Health so we can find better solutions for healthcare in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, this pandemic has exposed inefficiencies, lack of depth, and chronic underfunding of our strained healthcare system, a pandemic that a federal government has no strategy to end. The limited capacity, staff shortages, and backlogged health services have caused irreversible harm to Canadians, and it's caused by this government's refusal to increase funding. Why is this government refusing to negotiate health transfers to the provinces?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague who, again, I share a position on the Health Committee with, so I look forward to tackling some of these issues in committee. But once again, I'll reiterate the numbers. The Government of Canada has indeed provided almost $42 billion in cash support. We will continue to be there for our provinces and territories, and I will also acknowledge that we must continue to work and ensure that people are getting vaccinated and talking to our communities about getting vaccinated and not bowing to pressure from the anti-vax lobby that seems quite insistent to remove that from the conversation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Honourable Member for Hastings, Lennox and Addington.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives promised to meet the premiers in our first 100 days of governing to address the urgent needs of the provinces and to boost the growth rate of the Canada Health Transfer to at least 6%, providing stable, long-term, predictable health funding. The Prime Minister has failed to create a plan to work for all Canadians, and he has failed to bring Canadians back to normal. Why has this government not met with the provinces and territories to discuss fixing the health transfers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, and once again, that's just simply not true. The Prime Minister meets with the provinces and territories on a regular basis, as does our amazing Minister of Health. I represented the Minister of Health at a recent FPT meeting, and we were proud to discuss issues of pertinence with our provinces and territories, making sure that we continue to work in conjunction with them, providing the supports that are necessary, and every request that they've had of us recently has been fulfilled, and we'll continue to work with our provinces and territories.
Before we continue, I know it's Friday and people are willing to get home, but I think we'll keep it down so I can actually hear the answers to the questions, make sure they're correct. L'Honorable Député de Belleuil.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the streets of Ottawa and in front of Parliament, we are seeing a significant worsening of the situation. And all involved parties should call for a calming of the situation. We're seeing that the situation could stretch to the spring. We're seeing that camps are being built, and this is very worsening. This is very worrying, rather, for people. What will the government do, concretely, to support people's security? More specifically, will the government create a crisis unit bringing all police forces together, as we have recommended? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, there is a great deal of cooperation between the RCMP and Ottawa Police, which is the police force that has jurisdiction here in Ottawa. That conversation started at the beginning of the protest, and it is continuing now. As I was saying yesterday, I spoke with the Mayor of Ottawa, and then I ensured that the RCMP will be adding more resources to ensure that everyone is safe on the ground. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, am I understanding this correctly? Is everything that is happening without the government or despite the government? It's very concerning. These extremists are awaiting reinforcements coming from outside the region. As these truckers are waiting for reinforcements, as increasingly there are plans for counter-protests with the risk that it will lead to disturbances and confrontations, is someone contacting the spokespeople that we have finally found among these protesters to ask them to leave before things really get bad? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I hope that my colleague understands that operational discussions on the ground are being carried out by the responsible police service, Ottawa Police. That is how our democracy works. We need to respect the police's jurisdiction to have these discussions on the ground. And I know that the police is having a dialogue with some convoy leaders. But that is an area of police jurisdiction. Thank you.
North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, veterans continue to wait for their disability supports. The backlog of applications is long and has been for years, and the minister is not committing to extending temporary workers past March 31st. The list of veterans still waiting for help has been far too long, and without these much-needed workers, it will only get worse. Where is the commitment from this Prime Minister to support our veterans? These temporary workers must be made permanent to honor Canada's commitment to those who served our country. Mr. Speaker, when will the minister stand up for those who stood up for us?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. President, Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for her work on the Veterans Committee and share with the House that our government's investment of nearly $200 million have increased staff, over hundreds of staff workers, allowed us to, of course, speed up the processes. And Budget 2021 also allowed us to extend those resources. And I want to share with the House, very important, that we have seen in the last year a decrease of 40% of the backlogs to helping. Tackling the backlog is our top priority, and we will continue to do what we need to do to support our veterans. Thank you.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Martin Falls First Nation has declared a state of emergency for their children who've gone all year without school, not because of COVID. It's because they have no teachers. Because you can't bring teachers to a community suffering from a massive housing and infrastructure crisis. So if it's not safe for teachers, it's certainly not safe for students. And they pleaded with the minister all year for help. The school year is now half over, and nothing has been done. What steps will this minister take to guarantee the children of Martin Falls First Nation have a right to quality education this year?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for the question. The events in Martin Falls are concerning. Our department will follow up with the community and continues to follow up with the community to ensure a path forward that works for them. Everyone deserves the right to clean water and proper infrastructure to help with the community and the needs of the community. This is why we've invested in drinking water advisories since 2015. To date, we've lifted 127 long-term advisories and prevented 208 short-term advisories from becoming long-term. There is still more to do across the board for these communities, for water operators, and of course the proper infrastructure all communities need throughout this.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
The Prime Minister was crystal clear in this place when he told the people of Princeton, British Columbia, that he had their backs and would be there for them as they rebuild from flooding. Now the community needs $2 million as soon as possible to rebuild, or their property taxes will have to go up by 70%. Can the Prime Minister tell the people of Princeton when they will receive the federal support that he has committed to them?
The Honourable Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
I'd like to begin by thanking the member for the important question and for strong advocacy on behalf of his constituents and the people of British Columbia. And I want to assure this House that we're working very closely with the provincial authority. I spoke extensively to the Deputy Premier on this very issue the other day. We've made over $5 billion available through the Disaster Financial Assistance Fund, and we're working with communities and speaking to the BC municipalities in order to facilitate the recovery of the terrible events that took place as a result of the flooding. I want to assure the member that we'll continue to work with him and with the affected communities to be there for them to help in the recovery.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has made a commitment in this place. This is also a Prime Minister whose government gave Loblaws, a billion-dollar grocery chain, $12 million to buy new refrigerators. Now, the people of Princeton just want to receive the $2 million they were promised by this Prime Minister to rebuild their community today. Can this Prime Minister answer why they are waiting when others are receiving supports for things that are not, or that are nice to have, but not necessary to have?
The Honourable Minister of Emergency Preparedness.
And again, I understand the member's frustration. We share it. We are working very hard with the province. And as the member, I'm sure knows, the Disaster Financial Assistance Arrangement is done in partnership with our provincial authorities, and we're working with them to move money as expeditiously as possible to those communities that need it. We know that there's an enormous amount of work and issues with respect to interim housing. And I would also point out to the member that as a result of money that we have provided, as well as the province, to the Canadian Red Cross, we've been able to provide financial supports and services to individual families. Over 7,500 families have received direct support as a result of that contribution. We'll continue to be there for the people of Merritt and for all of the people of British Columbia.
Honourable Député de Richmond Athabasca.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the average family will have to spend about $1,000 more in 2022 for groceries. And that's not including additional costs for housing, gas, heating. $1,000 more just for groceries. That's the average wages, that's average weekly wages for a worker in Canada. People have had enough. What will this government do concretely to do something about the increase in the cost of living, which is something that everyone is suffering from right now?
Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians are concerned about the issues of affordability. We also know that inflation is a global phenomenon. We take protecting Canada's most vulnerable people very seriously. We are the government that introduced the CCB and the GIS, both indexed for inflation, which lifted almost 300,000 Canadians out of poverty. In fact, by 2019, our government lifted 1.3 million Canadians out of poverty, which lowered the Canada's poverty rate to all-time lows. We are going to continue to stay focused on affordability, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, this very morning, Statistics Canada has said that 200,000 jobs were lost in January and that the unemployment rate is now 6.5%. Those are real numbers, not those that the Minister has been repeating all week. People are having real problems. The cost of living is skyrocketing. People have less money in their wallets today because of Liberal decisions. And what are the Liberals doing? Spending, spending, spending. And that is having a real impact on inflation rates. When will this government focus on what really matters? Jobs and the cost of living.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians understand that inflation is a global problem. And here are some numbers. The latest inflation rate in Canada was 4.8%. In the US, 7%. In Germany, over 5%. Mr. Speaker, our inflation is under the G7 average, the G20's, and the OECD's averages as well.
Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, the government is trying to use 20th century rules to address the digital world of 2022. Through Bill C-11, the government is once again delegating more power to the CRTC for some future solution at some future time. But the government could act now and give support to Canadian broadcasters by simply abolishing CRTC Part 2 license fees. Will they?
Minister of Heritage Canada.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very important bill for Canadians, for our artists, for our creators, and the objectives are very important. It's about streamers contributing to our culture, Mr. Speaker. And we heard there were concerns about social media. We heard, we listened, and we fixed it, Mr. Speaker. Now the question is, what are the Conservatives going to do this time? Are they going to support our artists or creators or abandon them once again?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member for Perth Wellington.
Mr. Speaker, I think that the Liberals are also supporting Facebook spending $4.2 million in ad spending on Facebook alone in the last 2 years. Wow. But Mr. Speaker, it's like Groundhog Day, the day that this bill was introduced, because the challenges that were in C10 are again in C11. The old C10, there was an exclusion for user-generated content, but then they excluded that exclusion in committee. This time, the exclusion for user-generated content is excluded by another exclusion. So, Mr. Speaker, why can't the government simply exclude user-generated content that's on social media and protect Canadians in that way?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, it will be a pleasure to sit down with my friend and colleague and talk about the bill, maybe explain some of the sections of the bill, because the bill is very simple. It's about the platform contributing to the Canadian culture. That's extremely important. That's how we tell our stories. Mr. Speaker, our culture it's our past, it's our present, it's our future, it's our story, it's our Canadian stories, our music and everything. So this bill is very simple. Platforms are in and users are out.
Yeah. L'Honorable Député de Belleuil-Champ.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Mayor of Ottawa has asked for support to do something about the occupation, an occupation which is clearly illegal. Ottawa police officers clearly need rest, and the developing tensions will eventually become truly dangerous. If the Prime Minister comes here once he gets better from COVID, he will see. Does he understand that the message he's sending to these protesters is that they can stay as long as they want? In fact, that they're practically welcome? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, perhaps my colleague didn't hear my answer a bit earlier. Yesterday, I verified that the RCMP will be offering more support and resources on the ground to help Ottawa Police, the police that has jurisdiction in the area. We need to respect the law. We need to respect the rights of people who live in the area. And the RCMP will be helping Ottawa Police. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly, speaking of respecting the law, at a time when the number of trucks may increase, this protest is illegal, not because of the ideas that it's promoting. I may not agree, but they have the right to have different ideas and express them. But because trucks are being parked in the middle of the street, it's illegal. Tickets should be handed out. Normally, when you do this kind of thing, you look around and you see a sign that says, "You will be towed at your own expense." It's time to put up a sign like that. And where is the Prime Minister in all this? The Honourable Minister, I share my colleagues' concerns. I share them because there are several examples of cases where the convoy has not respected the law. That is why it is very important that the RCMP be there to offer support to Ottawa Police, to ensure that the law is being respected, including on Wellington and throughout Ottawa.
For Calgary, Midnapore.
CEOs of companies received extravagant compensation in 2020, even the companies that received the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. This government allowed corporations receiving federal supports to still give massive payouts to their CEOs at the same time that Canadians were struggling to make ends meet. Why has the minister allowed for federal supports to go towards CEOs instead of Canadian workers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, when COVID first hit, businesses had to close their doors to keep Canadians safe. Today, we have more active businesses than we did before COVID, and we are seeing that bankruptcies and insolvencies are below normal levels. Thanks to our government's decisive economic policies, we've avoided the economic scarring that followed the 2008 economic crisis.
The Honourable Member for Calgary, Midnapore.
ESDC was made aware in July of 2020 of over $442 million in double payments for the Canada Emergency Response Benefit. However, the Auditor General can't audit the program until the CRA verifies whether recipients meet eligibility requirements, which won't be until 2023. Will the government start verifying the eligibility now so that Canadians can know how their tax dollars are being spent?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our government is focusing on making sure that Canadians and Canadian workers have the measures that they need to be supported during this pandemic crisis. It is unfortunate that with the verge of Omicron that the Conservative Party voted against C2. It brought in measures that are currently supporting Canadians. We are going to be there for Canadians. We made a promise to do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. We're going to continue doing just that, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Mr. Speaker, this government has again stiffed Canadian IT companies and awarded a sensitive tech contract to a foreign company. So sensitive, in fact, they stated the work had to be done here in Ottawa using a government's computer. Yet the work is actually being done outside the country and certainly not on a secured government server. But don't worry, for security, they told the company to merely turn the screen away from the window when working. Is this seriously the government's idea of cybersecurity?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the very important question. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to national security, when it comes to cybersecurity, members on the other side of the House and Canadians at home understand that we take that very seriously. I can assure the member that all issues relating to cybersecurity and national security are reviewed by the relevant agency to make sure that we protect data and we protect the safety of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton West.
Not at all the case, Mr. Speaker. The government actually, when queried, claimed the workers had to stay in the U.S. due to COVID restrictions. But during the first year of the pandemic, 7 million people were able to cross the border into Canada. The Liberals famously even exempted wealthy, connected American CEOs from the border restrictions. So why would the Liberals give a pass to the wealthy and connected, but tell contractors working on our sensitive security tech abroad to simply turn the monitors away from the window when working?
The Honourable Minister of Science, Innovation and Technology.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the colleague for a very important question. The colleague understands that throughout this pandemic, Mr. Speaker, we put a number of measures to protect the health and safety of Canadians. A number of them were regarding our borders. Like I said before, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to cybersecurity, I don't think we can take lessons from the colleagues. We take that very seriously, as well as national security. Canadians at home know that we will always take decisions to further their best interests. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
The Liberals have been promising to lift the blood ban for years. In December, the Canadian Blood Services and AMA Quebec submitted a recommendation to lift the ban and move to behavior-based policy for donations. The Minister of Health said his government would be moving quickly, but it's been 6 weeks and we still have no idea about the process, how long it will take, and when changes will be implemented. Will the minister share the timeline for ending the ban on blood and plasma donations for men who have sex with other men and trans women once and for all?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I sincerely thank my colleague from Edmonton-Griesbach for this important question. We committed over and over again to continue to ensure that our blood services are fair and equitable, and I agree with the member that historically they have not been. Steps have been taken, and as we all know, there is a timeline going forward to ensure that blood donations can be made by everybody in Canada. That's the fairest way forward. That's the most equitable way forward, and I share a commitment with many members of this House that want to ensure that these changes are made ASAP. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for London Fanshawe.
Mr. Speaker, London and Windsor's airports, which contribute enormously to their local economies, have remained closed to international travel, while other smaller airports in the region and across the country have been allowed to open. The Transport Minister has given no indication of when they will be allowed to reopen to international flights. They have lost significant revenue through this key winter season. Of course, there are public health recommendations against travel, but people need to know what to expect in the coming months. Will the Minister let people in London and Windsor know when they can expect their airports to reopen to international travel?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for her important question. We are advising Canadians to avoid all non-essential international travel at this time. This is to add to our layered approach at the border, including pre-departure PCR testing, on-arrival testing, and these are measures that are based on public health advice, and we are constantly evaluating domestic and international COVID situation. We won't hesitate to adjust these measures as needed.
The Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Mr. Speaker, throughout the pandemic, the need in the LGBTQ2 community for support provided by LGBTQ organizations and partners was a critical lifeline for many. These organizations provided critical mental health support, suicide prevention, and gender-affirming care, as well as housing support and other valuable resources. In order to continue that essential work, they require sustainable financial assistance. Can the Minister of Gender Equality and Youth update the House on the accomplishments of our government in helping the LGBTQ2 community? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for her question and her advocacy, Mr. Speaker, and she is absolutely right. The LGBTQ2 organizations are a vital, vital resource for Canadians, and they need our support to keep their doors open and continue to grow. And it is why this week I was so pleased to extend funding, Mr. Speaker, for the historic LGBTQ2 Community Capacity Fund for another year. This funding is going to enable organizations to strengthen their infrastructure, to advance LGBTQ2 equality across this country. The tireless work and advocacy of LGBTQ2 organizations have shaped the fight for equality here in Canada and, frankly, around the world, and we must continue to support their efforts.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, it's now 420 days since Parliament passed a unanimous motion which referenced the, quote, alarming rate of suicide in Canada, called it a, quote, national health crisis, and demanded that the House take, quote, immediate action to institute a nationwide 3-digit 988 suicide prevention hotline. My question for the Minister today is simple. What is the current number that Canadians should remember so that in their darkest moment, they don't have to do a Google search to find the help that might save their life?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his important question. Our government remains committed to implementing and fully funding a national 3-digit mental health crisis and suicide prevention hotline. The CRTC is currently considering public input from consultations that have been extended, and replies will be accepted until March 2022 to accommodate additional interventions in formats more accessible to persons with disabilities, such as video. We understand the urgency of implementing this crisis line, and we will ensure we get it right, including that it has the capacity to connect people to the most appropriate support.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, if the government doesn't know the number, how can Canadians be expected to? That Google search will eventually tell you that the 24/7 number for the Canada Suicide Prevention Service is 1-833-456-4566. Since that December 2020 vote, more than 4,500 Canadians have tragically lost their lives to suicide. We have so much work to do together on mental health in this country, but this is a relatively easy first step. By what specific date will Canada finally have an operational 3-digit 988 suicide prevention hotline?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, and again, I thank my colleague for his question. On comprend l'urgence de mettre en œuvre cette ligne et nous allons nous assurer de bien faire.
We understand the importance of implementing this line, and the line has to be able to connect people to the most appropriate service in the most appropriate way.
$5 million.
We're spending $25 million over 5 years to develop and implement a pan-Canadian suicide prevention system that's entirely operational and will eventually be able to provide services.
Dundas, South Glengarry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is a growing frustration among Canadians about the Prime Minister's lack of leadership to ending this pandemic. We want to see an end to the protests and to the lockdowns. We denounce all forms of hatred and violence. The comments they last heard from the Prime Minister were earlier, I think it was last month, saying we need to hunker down over the winter and hope for a better spring. Canadians are looking for a more detailed plan. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for unity to get us past this. Will the Prime Minister, will this government finally stop dividing Canadians, bring them together with hope and optimism to finally get us past this pandemic?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I hope that all members would recognize the leadership that has been shown by the Prime Minister and this government by following the evidence and science which unequivocally demonstrates time and time again that the way that we're going to get out of this pandemic is through vaccinations. And that's why we've been working with all Canadians. We put this question on the ballot in the last election. Canadians had an opportunity to choose, and they chose to support a way forward through vaccinations. Mr. Speaker, I'm very concerned about the demonstrations that we've seen and the lack of following of the law in the streets. We need to be sure that we follow the law. No one is above the law, Mr. Speaker. That applies to the convoy as well. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister is ducking the question again. The most important question that my constituents and all Canadians want to know is when. When will the federal COVID-19 restrictions end? Canadians deserve transparency. They deserve to know what the Liberals' plan is, if any, to end these restrictions. My question, what is the metric and what is the timeline for Canadians to expect to see an end to COVID-19 restrictions?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Adam, get up. Stop there.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely, I agree with my colleague that we all want COVID-19 to be over. Perhaps one thing that we disagree on is how. We need to ensure that all of our communities are vaccinated, and we're encouraging everybody to get vaccinated so that we can get back to normal. My colleague knows that many of the lockdowns are provincial in nature, and we continue to work with our provinces and territories to ensure that our communities continue to be safe. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Avignon, Amitis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, I'm completely flabbergasted by the answer from the Public Safety Minister to the Leader of the Bloc. He says that the federal government has never attempted to speak to the various representatives of the protesters in Ottawa. He's putting it all on the Ottawa police, but the occupants are here to demonstrate against the federal government. The minister is not here to comment on the news. He's here as Minister of Public Safety. When is he going to show some leadership? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. This government had a record of making a lot of commitments during the pandemic, and here on this side of the House, we follow the evidence. We follow the science. And the way to get out of the pandemic is through vaccination. And we want to continue engaging, but we have to respect the police jurisdiction on the ground. They make the operational decisions, and that's how our democracy works. The Honourable Member for Avignon, Amitis-Matane-Matapédia. Mr. Speaker, what's happening in Ottawa is more than a demonstration. The capital city of a G7 country is under siege. The federal government should be organizing a crisis team across all levels of government and police forces. The Minister of Public Safety should be held accountable every day in a press briefing, as any good government does during a crisis. Will the minister take this crisis seriously and create a crisis unit? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as I already said, and I have done so a number of times, we have to respect the police's role. They have the skill and the jurisdiction over operational decisions on the ground. This government has a record of engagement with the public in the pandemic. We have to follow the science. We have to use vaccination as our best strategy to get out of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, veterans' benefits should adjust with inflation. And yet, veterans' benefits increased only 2.7%, while inflation increased to 4.8%.
Shameful.
This may not seem like a lot to Laurentian elites, but to veterans who are trying to feed their families, every single penny counts amid ballooning inflation.
That's right.
Will the Minister of Veterans Affairs commit to ending this discriminatory policy so veterans can get what they deserve to feed their families?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for joining our Committee, of course, of Veteran Affairs. But I'd like to remind him that it is our government that invested $11 billion in the last 5 years to support our veterans. And please let me share with Canadians, that government fired 1,000 workers and closed 9 offices. We reopened the 9 offices, and we are investing in supporting our veterans, and we will continue to do so. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Lambton Kent Middlesex.
Speaker, the price of chicken is up 6.2%, bacon 19.1%, and gas 33%. In Lambton Kent Middlesex, seniors, people with disabilities, and families are telling me that they can no longer afford the basic necessities. And rural Canadians have no choice but to drive everywhere.
That's right.
So with the government so disinterested in Canada's inflation crisis, they are feeling frustrated and losing hope. So what will it take for this government to admit that just inflation is hitting Canadians hard, or do they not care?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, we understand how important the issues of affordability are. We also understand that inflation is a global phenomenon. You know, Interestingly enough, Conservatives often accuse us of overinvesting in Canadians, but in the last election, Conservatives actually promised to spend more than what our government is currently investing. And at the same time, their promised policies were assessed by experts, and it was noted that to underdeliver on housing, on childcare, and on climate change. I think Canadians made the right choice in the last election, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Regina, Wascana.
Mr. Speaker, AGT Foods, Federated Cooperatives, Viterra, and Cargill have all announced the construction of new canola crushing plants in Regina and the surrounding area, creating 400 full-time jobs. But growing canola requires fertilizer, lots of fertilizer. And this government has announced it will be making farmers ration fertilizer by 30%. Shameful. Mr. Speaker, why is this government putting Regina's new canola crushing plants in jeopardy?
Good question. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Mr. Président. Je rassure mon collègue que...
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to reassure my colleague. Yes, Mr. Speaker, you know how committed we are to fighting climate change, and farmers are the first to suffer the consequences. We're working with industry representatives on finding the best solutions, and we're significantly providing funding to help farmers adopt best practices that are energy efficient. So unlike what the Conservatives may be thinking, our productivity does not run counter to environmentalism or productivity. The honourable member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, according to a Léger poll, more than two-thirds of Canadians believe it's important that streaming platforms contribute to Canadian culture. And according to the same poll, young Canadians are the ones most interested in having these companies contribute to our culture. The Minister of Heritage has just tabled a bill on online streaming. Can he tell us in concrete terms what this bill means for young Canadians?
Monsieur le Président, je tiens...
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague. That's an excellent question he asked. And it's good news for our artists. With our bill, streaming platforms will have to contribute to our culture. It will create more homegrown movies, series, and music. And that's what we need to build the next generation of Canadian artists, to support the next Denis Villeneuve, The Weeknd, or Cœur de Pirate. So in concrete terms, our bill means that young Canadians will be able to celebrate and participate in our culture today and for the future.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to be the last person to rise and ask a question about the price of all essential goods. The problem, Mr. Speaker, is 60% of Canadians say they're struggling to pay their monthly grocery bills. And today, the job numbers come out for January, and it's not good news. The unemployment rate is 6.5%, and this means more than 200,000 Canadians do not have jobs. In Canada, in 2022, this is a disgrace, and it lies squarely at the feet of this Prime Minister. So my question is, with hundreds of thousands of Canadians out of work and prices skyrocketing, when will Canadians once again be able to afford the food, fuel, and heat they need to heat their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the data released today showed that Canadian workers and businesses were impacted by Omicron, and that is precisely why we have supports in place to support them. Supports, by the way, that the Conservative Party voted against. The fact remains our economy has strong fundamentals and is recovering well from the COVID recession. Jobs have recovered 101% from pre-pandemic levels, while they have only recovered by 87% in the U.S. Statistics Canada has released data that shows that we had 6 consecutive months of GDP growth. We're going to continue to focus on Canadians. We're going to continue to focus on affordability, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député. The honourable member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, last November I contacted the Minister of Immigration and the Minister of Employment and Social Development to discuss the problems that several businesses in my riding were experiencing with the temporary foreign worker programs. Unfortunately, dead silence. I wonder if these ministers communicate with each other. Do they even talk to each other? Do they have a real plan to shorten processing times and, moreover, simplify the paperwork so that this workforce, which our businesses need so badly, can finally get here? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to answer the honourable member's question. He's right to point out that businesses need access to workers and need access to them quickly. I would respond by pointing to the fact that we have last year welcomed the greatest number of permanent residents, including under economic migration streams, in Canada's history. Just this Monday, I also had the opportunity to make an announcement that includes $85 million to reduce processing times with a specific focus on work permits. And to respond to his question about whether I have the opportunity to meet with the minister responsible for ESDC, we will be chatting this afternoon, as we often do, to work on programs that will get workers into Canadian businesses more quickly, because we know the economy can flourish if we give it the opportunity to gain access to the labor that it needs.
The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoots.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On January 28th, it was reported that Rideau Hall paid out $277,592 in confidential settlements, as well as running up legal bills of nearly $170,000 in the same year. Former Governor General Julie Payette resigned for presiding over a, quote, toxic workplace. How much more hush money has been paid to those who endured the intolerable workplace at Rideau Hall, and when, specifically when, was the Prime Minister made aware of it?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much to my colleague for this question. I would advise him, first of all, that all questions pertaining to legal matters of the Office of the Secretary of the Governor-General are best directed to that office. But I also want to advise this House that our government remains firmly committed to ensuring that every Canadian has a safe and healthy workplace, and the Prime Minister has made a commitment to provide such a workplace to Canada's public service. We welcome the Right Honourable Mary Simon's commitment to foster a positive environment at Rideau Hall as she and her staff continue to undertake important work in the service of all Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week marks the 26th anniversary of the designation of the month of February as Black History Month, thanks to a motion moved by the Honourable Jean Augustine in this Parliament. This is a month to celebrate, remember, and recognize the many contributions made by Black Canadians and their accomplishments. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Diversity and Inclusion please update us on how the government will be supporting Black History Month?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Calgary Skyview for his question. This year, the theme for Black History Month is February and Forever, celebrating Black history today and every day. Our government supports Black Canadians through investments in a number of areas, including building capacity in Black communities, supporting young Black Canadians, culturally focused mental health programs, entrepreneurships, and anti-racism strategy. During Black History Month, I invite everyone to join us in celebrating and recognizing the many contributions Black Canadians have made to our Canada.
Bravo. Member for Port Moody, Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, this pandemic has impacted transportation. Canadian communities are facing damaging cuts to public transit that impact thousands of seniors, workers, and students who rely on it every day. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities are calling on the federal government to invest urgent funds to keep public transit running for people and to address the climate crisis. Last November, the NDP made the same call, and we haven't heard back yet. When will the Liberals act to ensure our public transit remains viable for the people who rely on it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for her question. We know that many Canadians, including those living in remote areas and Indigenous people, depend on public service for transportation. I sent a letter to my provincial counterparts earlier this year. The minister did, actually, and the federal government is ready to support provinces where public transit is concerned. I understand that the importance of this service for Canadians is top of mind, and we will continue advocating for them and working with provincial and industry partners to find a solution.
Order. I guess that does question period for today. I thought things were going so well, but thank you for your indulgence in that. I recognize the Honourable Deputy House Leader for the government.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
There have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent to adopt the following motion. That a take-no debate on the opioid crisis in Canada be held on Tuesday, February 8, 2022, pursuant to Standing Order 53-1, and that notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House, A, members rising to speak during the debate may indicate to the chair that they will be dividing their time with another member. B, the time be provided for the debate be extended beyond 4 hours as needed to include a minimum of 12 periods of 20 minutes each. And C, no quorum calls, dilatory motions, or requests for unanimous consent shall be received by the chair.
All those opposed to the honourable member moving the motion, please say nay. Agreed. The House has heard the terms of the motion. Tous ceux qui s'opposent à la motion veuillent bien.
All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Carried.
Now, tabling of documents. Introduction of government bills. Statements by ministers. Reports of interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from committees. The honourable member for Scarborough Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have the honour to present in both official languages the following two reports of the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. The first report, entitled Safe Haven in Canada, Special Immigration and Refugee Measures are urgently needed for the people of Hong Kong. The second report, entitled Immigration in the Time of COVID-19, Issues and Challenges. Pursuant to Standing Order 109, the committee requests that the government table a comprehensive